자, 이제 본격적으로 저희 세션 시작할 수 있도록 하겠습니다. 첫 번째 세션은 경제 및 과학기술 파트너십에 대한 내용으로 진행이 됩니다. 첫 번째 세션의 서해와 토론을 맡아주실 분은 연세대학교의 이연호 교수님이십니다. 이연호 교수님께 박수로 환영해 주시기 바랍니다.
네, 안녕하십니까. 방금 소개받은 연세대학교 정치외교학과의 이연호 교수입니다. 저는 영국에서 학위를 하고 모교로 왔기 때문에 그 인연으로 제가 이 일을 만든 것도 있지만, 또 우리 또 윤 이사님하고의 관계도 있고, 또 윤보선 대통령께서 한국인 최초의 영국 유학생이라는 그런 인연도 있지만, 사실 이 집 사모님 되시는 양은선 사모님이 제 대학 선배십니다. 그래서 항상 와서 이런 일을 할 때 제가 왔다고 꼭 인사 보고 드리고, 조금 아까도 왔다고 신고를 드렸습니다. 그래서 오늘 이 행사에 여러 번 참여를 했는데요. 지난번은 제가 여기서 사회를 보는 일을 할 때 맨날 고민이 영어로 할까 한국어로 할까. 그런데 처음엔 저도 이제 영어로 했는데요. 하다 보니까 어떤 일이 발생을 하느냐, 다 알아들으시지만 영어로 질문하기 쑥스러우시니까 그냥 강의하듯이 앉아 계시는 거예요. 근데 이 5월의 좋은 계절에 이 윤보선 고택 아름다운 데에서 이렇게 모여서 지적인 대화를 나눌 수 있는 그런 좋은 기회가 많지 않은데, 마치 강의 듣듯이 앉아서 이렇게 계시는 걸 저희가 원하는 게 아닙니다. 저희가 제1세션을 경제 문제로 했거든요. 왜 그러냐 하면은 경제 문제는 가장 모든 거의 시작이에요. 먹고 사는 문제고, 아담 스미스의 고향이 스코틀랜드잖아요. 1776년에 The Wealth of Nation 국보론을 썼는데 2년 후가 되면 250주년입니다. 아담 스미스의 국보론을 보면 뭐 대단한 얘기를 한 게 아니고, 그분이 그 아주 지적인 대학 교수 생활도 관두고 버클러 공작에 아들의 개인 교사로 와 있다가 그랜트홀을 갔다가 그 공작이 병이 나니까 그 스코틀랜드로 돌아와서 낮에 이제 대학 교수 관두고 그랬으니까, 우리처럼 이렇게 모여서 좋은 날에 펍에 가서 맥주도 드시고 친구분들하고 얘기도 하다가 그 도덕 감성론이라고 moral sentiment 그 책을 써서 유명해지고, 그 다음에 또 쓰다 보니 The Wealth of Nation도 쓰시고, 그래서 이렇게 유명해지셨잖아요. 그래서 오늘 여러분들하고는 저는 경제 문제를 얘기를 하면서, 사실 제가 정치외교학자거든요. 근데 오후 세션은 재미가 없어요. 주제가 디모크라시, 안보 이런 것들이에요. 근데 오전 게 재밌는 주제예요. 제가 일부러 이걸 맡았어요. 먹고 사는 문제고 재밌는 얘기고, 강의를 제가 그래서 김홍종 우리 발표하시는 그 김홍종 박사님하고 교수님하고 지금 저 고려대학교에 계신데요. 그다음에 제시카 콥, 이 두 분께 가급적이면 천천히 재밌게 발표해달라고 부탁드렸어요. 그건 그거고요. 이따가 또 질문하실 때 다양한 질문들 하세요. 이때 영국에 가면 어디 관광하는 게 좋으냐, 스코틀랜드에 가는 게 요즘 비행기 값이 어떠냐, 요즘 브렉시트 이후에 영국 사정이 어떠냐, 궁금하신 거 있잖아요. 그런 것들 편안하게 얘기하세요. 이 좋은 정원에서 그런 얘기하려고 우리가 모인 거지 강의 들으려고 오신 게 아니에요. 그러니까 저도 이따가 하다가 토론 듣고 나서 필요할 때만 영어로 하고 한국어로 많이 할 거거든요. 또 오신 분들 계시니까. 그래서 오늘 여러분들하고 좀 즐거운 5월의 계절의 여왕의 즐거운 5월의 지적인 대화를 이 윤보선 고택에서 나누는 걸로 기억되실 수 있도록 그렇게 진행을 하겠습니다. 그러니까 편안하게 재밌는 얘기 하시면 좋겠어요. 지금 대사님이 모든 얘기를 다 하셔가지고 사실은 보면 다 이미 써머리 하셨는데요. 작년에 우리 윤 대통령께서 영국에 스테이트 비짓을 하셔가지고 그 파트너십을 레벨을 올리셨어요. 그래서 이제 글로벌 스트래티직 파트너십이 됐죠. 두 나라가 아주 이제 더 여러 가지 협력을 많이 하자. 그래서 근데 1883년에 저희가 이제 우호 통상 조약을 맺어서 미국 다음으로 이 관계가 시작이 됐지 않습니까? 저도 영국에서 공부를 했지만 어떻게 양국 관계를 발전시키고 심화시킬 건가에 대한 고민을 많이 하고 있어요. 그래서 저도 이런 고민에 대해서 솔직하게 얘기하고 그러는 그런 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 두 분을 모셨습니다. 한 분은 우리 김홍종 교수님이신데 전에 키예프에서 원장도 하시고 유럽, 영국 쪽에 FTA 아주 전문가시고 실제 한영 FTA 문제를 가장 많이 알고 심도 있게 실무 정책적으로 이론적으로 밑받침하신 분이세요. 그래서 제가 저분을 모시는 게 가장 정확한 얘기를 듣겠다. 그래서 김홍종 교수님 모셨고요. 그다음에 영국 쪽의 얘기, 그래서 한국하고 영국 간의 어떤 scientific and technological cooperation 이 문제를 어떻게 협력할 건가에 대해서는 이 문제를 담당하시는 제시카 쿱 Head of Science of the UK Embassy to Korea 께서 발표를 해주시겠습니다. 그래서 시간도 넉넉하게 한 20분씩 드릴 거고요. 끝나고 난 다음에 제가 몇 가지 질문하고 플로어를 열 겁니다. 그러니까 주제에 상관없는 것도 어디가 궁금한 거 막 질문하세요. 여기 영국대사관에서 뭐 예를 들면은 요즘 영국 유학 가면 장학금 주냐, 우리의 미국 보내는 게 좋냐, 영국 보내는 게 좋냐 이런 것까지 다 질문해서 좋습니다. 그래서 발표를 듣도록 하겠습니다. 그러면 먼저 저기 한국 발표부터 듣겠습니다. 여러분 김홍종 교수님께서 한영 경제관계의 지형 변화에 관해서 발표를 해주시겠습니다. 여러분 큰 박수로 환영해 주시기 바랍니다.
네, 감사합니다. 제가 이럴 줄 알았으면 한국말로 발표문을 정리할 걸 그랬어요. 근데 하여튼 다시 한번이 아니라 우리 김영호 교수님 초청해 주셔서 감사드리고요. 우리 매티슨 총장님 이렇게 와주셔서 감사드리고 또 초청해 주셔서 감사를 드립니다. 특히 한영 경제관계 관련해서는 여러 가지로 할 얘기가 많은데 이 전체 세션이 좀 제너럴하게 또 이렇게 해야 되기 때문에 제가 그런 부분도 다 감안을 해서 또 우리 이현호 교수님께서 또 저를 이렇게 불러주셔가지고 또 다시 한번 감사드리고요. 그리고 또 저는 오늘 이 세미나가 정말 마음에 들었던 게 경제 세션이 항상 세 번째 세션인데 여기서는 첫 번째 세션이에요. 그래서 저 처음입니다 이런 일이. 항상 오후에 4시에 항상 시작을 했는데 지금 이게 아침 11시에 이렇게 제가 굿모닝을 할 수 있어요. 항상 9대부터는 했는데 굿모닝을 할 수 대단히 반갑고요. 어제 우리가 여기 비가 오고 rainy and windy 그리고 그저께는 very sunny but a little bit hot 그리고 오늘은 아주 굉장히 sunny하지만 굉장히 cool하죠. Very changeable, a variety of phases of weather we can witness in Seoul. 저는 이제 에든버러를 이제 여러 번 방문을 했었는데 I'm very happy to witness that this kind of the variety of the weathers in Edinburgh for just 1 hour. So 굉장히 아주 인내심을 기르는데 굉장히 좋은 것 같아요. 그래서 에든버러 항상 굉장히 터칭한 항상 그런 마음을 가지고 방문을 합니다. 그래서 오늘 제가 말씀드릴 것은 이제 영국 간의 그런 관계와 관련해서 일단 제가 이제 영어로 썼기 때문에 영어로 제가 또 말씀을 드릴 거고요. 그러니까 이제 핵심 메시지는 영국도 변했고 한국도 변했다. 그래서 새롭게 변화된 정체성 하에서 한영 관계는 앞으로 더욱더 할 것이 많다. 이제 그것이 특 경제, 과학, 기술 분야에서 굉장히 할 것이 많다는 것이 제 주요 메시지가 되겠습니다. 자, 그러면 이제 제가 발표를 하도록 하겠습니다. 대부분의 이제 내용은 지금 거기 있는 내용하고 거의 똑같습니다. 그래서 조금 제가 좀 줄여가지고 제가 발표하도록 하겠습니다. Since the establishment of diplomatic ties with the signing of the Treaty of Amity and Commerce between Joseon and the British Empire in 1883, and the subsequent re-establishment of diplomatic relations between the Republic of Korea and the United Kingdom in 1949, the bilateral relations has undergone noteworthy evolution. Beyond the realms of politics and security, this evolution has extended to encompass economic and trade domains, initially resembling the asymmetric economic relations typical of the free world era during the Cold War and post-colonial period. The early economic ties between the two nations were largely non-reciprocal. akin to those established by the UK with numerous developing nations such as Commonwealth. Regarded primarily through an economic lens, the Korea-UK relations held limited significance. The substantial disparity in developmental stages and economic scale between the two nations cast doubt on the prospects for deeper economic collaboration in the future. The narrative following the establishment of diplomatic ties between these two nations is undeniably remarkable, as is widely acknowledged, with Korea's rapid ascent over several decades transforming into one of the most vibrant economic globally. The relationship between the two has witnessed an explosive surge, both quantitatively and qualitatively. Trade between the two marks a staggering increase of 2,662 times from 1965 to 2017. During the same period, Korea's export to the UK and import from the UK escalated by 1,986 times and 4,736 times respectively. They emerged as significant investors in each other as well. I posit that the notable transformation, particularly prominent since the 2010s, stem from variance in industrial structure. The impact of the pre-trade agreement and swift shift in the respective national identity of both countries, I contend that each of these factors serves as a pivotal determinant shaping the historical trajectory, current dynamics, and future prospects of bilateral relations. Let me first talk about the past, so-called industry. Reflecting on the earlier epochs, it is evident that Korea has substantially profited from its involvement in the GATT regime. Since then, Korea has adaptively leveraged the open trade environment fostered by the GATT through policies geared towards export-led economic growth. It is noteworthy that the EC, Economic Communities, has played a pivotal role in establishing and upholding the GATT regime in those days. Additionally, the EC pioneered the GSP, Generalized System of Preference, GSP for developing nations in the early 1970s, with Korea emerging as the beneficiary of this program. Over time, economic relations between the two entities have matured progressively, albeit heavily reliant on non-reciprocal preferential treatment extended by the EC, with the UK standing as the principal supporter of Korea in this regard. Regarding the trade dynamics between Korea and the UK, the bilateral merchandise trade historically depicted Korea's persistent surplus until 2011, with a sole exception of the period spanning 1968 to 1972. Amid the shifting, so just before the UK is joining the European Union, amid the shifting landscape, the most prominent and fundamental explanations for this phenomenon stems from the stark disparity in industrial structure between the two countries. As manufacturing wanes, the UK has embraced the high value-added services, notably in business and finance, whereas Korea has propelled its industries primarily centered around manufacturing. As of 2022, Korea's industrial framework comprised 1.59% agriculture and 25.63% for manufacturing and slightly less than 60% of services, contrasting with the UK's industrial makeup consisting of 0.71% agriculture, 8.45% manufacturing, so less than 10%, and more than 70% service. So sharp contrast between the two countries in terms of industrial structure that can explain the past of the two nations' economic relations I am emphasizing. Second, I'm not talking about present relations, which is deeply related to two FTAs. The first one, Korea-EU FTA, and the second one, Korea-UK FTA. The provisional implementation of the Korea-EU FTA in 2011 marks the pinnacle of economic relations between Korea and the EU. This agreement held significant implications for both parties, serving as a precedent for other FTAs. The UK ROK, the EU ROK FTA, that is the official name from the EU side, was the inaugural and the sole new generation FTA under the EU's new trade policy era, preceding its preferential trade relations with Canada and Japan in 2017 and 2019, respectively. As the first comprehensive and high-level FTA with an advanced and stable economy, it established a benchmark for the subsequent FTAs to Korea as well, alongside the Korea-US FTA. The Korea-EU FTA instigated a notable shift in the goods trade dynamics between the two nations. Korea's trade surplus with the UK, which have been consistent since 1973, transitioned into a deficit for 3 consecutive years from 2012 to 2014. This transformation in Korea's trade balance was primarily driven by a substantial surge in Korea's import, leading to a deficit of $1.7 billion in 2014. Although Korea's surplus rebounded in 2015, albeit at significantly reduced levels, indicating a more balanced goods trade relations. As of 2023, the bilateral trade volume between the two stands at $11.11 billion, with export totaled almost $6 billion and imports just $5.15 billion, resulting in a trade surplus of Korea $811 million, quite a stark decrease compared to the peak surplus of the $3.3 billion recorded in 2007. Korea's prominent export to the UK comprised electric and passenger cars and mobile phone, and its principal import encompassed crude oil, platinums, and cars. Of particular significance is crude oil, emerged as Korea's primary new import commodity from the UK following the implementation of FTA, highlighting the most striking diversification effect of trade items brought about by the FTA. We trade economists are always thinking about the kind of the FTA's impact, not only in the increasing of trade volumes, but also the increasing of the variety of the tariff lines, which means that more deeper economic relations between the two countries. So FTA's impact on the increasing the variety of the tradable goods is very important, and then crude oil is one of the typical example of this kind of the achievement between both countries. Regarding service trades between the two countries, the UK has maintaining a trade surplus, chronic surplus in the service area, persisting to this day, with Korea's service exports has steadily increased. As of 2019, Korea's service trade with the UK recorded a service trade deficit of $2,525 million. Recent trend indicates a continuous increase in service export, while service imports have decreased from the Korean side, leading to a reduction in a deficit of service trade balance. The primary export sectors in service trade include other business services, financial, and travel. Major imports comprise of the other business and travel and transportation services over the same year from the Korean side. When it comes to investment relations between the two, Korea's investment in the UK recorded a decrease in 2012, followed by a gradual increase. It surged dramatically in 2018, but has since exhibited a sharp decline trend. Korea's investment in the UK is predominantly concentrated in the services sector, with only a minimal portion allocated to the manufacturing sector. and then the major investment areas and heavily weighted towards the financial sector, with a significant investment also seen in the electricity, gas, steam, and then air conditioning supply industry, as well as the real estate sector as well. The UK's investment to Korea in Korea has shown significant fluctuations over the year, and mainly focusing on the manufacturing, so which is quite different from the Korea's investment to the UK. The Korea-UK Free Trade Agreement came effect after the Brexit transition period on January the 1st of 2021. Currently, both countries are in the process of negotiating amendment of this FTA. In the rounds of the negotiations, both countries have agreed not only to modernize the existing agreement, but also to discuss the introduction of new norms in various areas such as digital, supply chains, clean energy, bioeconomy, services, and investment. Additionally, they have committed to striving to establish a comprehensive and forward-looking strategic trade relationship. I'm very happy to say like this. The third, I'm not talking about the future of the two countries' relations, which is related to the identity. I wish to delve into the construction of identity and its ramification on the societal and economic fabric of a sovereign state. In the wake of the global economic crisis, profound transportation in self-perception have unfolded across numerous nations, catalyzed by significant events. Both the UK and Korea stand as illustrative example of this phenomenon. The swift and pronounced shift in self-identity witnesses in both countries through the 2010s and 2020s, the widely regarded as pivotal factors shaping the trajectory of the Korea-UK relationship in the years to come. Let's initially contemplate the case of the UK. If we were to broadly partition the UK's 15 years post-crisis into three distinct epochs, the initial 5 years was defined by austerity measures, succeeded by another 5-year period predominantly shaped by Brexit negotiations, and culminating in the final quinquenniums characterized by the exigencies imposed by COVID-19 and repercussions of Brexit. While the austerity measures enacted by the Tory government elicited substantial debate, they predominantly facilitate the erosion of local communities within the UK, I'm arguing. Based on my experience, I mean, in my travel for the 2 months in 2019. It is true that pensions and international aid became more generous, and public spending on the national healthcare system and education were nominally maintained, but vast swaths of essential areas, particularly those directly impacting local communities, underwent substantial sacrifices. These encompasses the court, prison, police, wild department, rural transportation services, healthcare facilities, youth initiative, infrastructure maintenance, public health initiative, and even diplomatic endeavors. It would be difficult to refute that austerity measures alongside the Syrian refugee crisis in 2015 exerted a significant influence on Brexit. A shift in public sentiment, simmering like a furnace within, was quietly emerging. And finally, Brexit has arrived and Britannia unchained. The outcome of the Brexit referendum surprised not only the UK but also many people worldwide. Logically, rationally, what experts deemed as an eventually that simply could not occur was proven entirely wrong. I confess to being one of those Polish proponents of such argument. Since the Brexit referendum, the UK has seen a turnover 4 prime ministers, with the current 5th prime minister in office. Maybe possibly 6th prime minister, before the end of this year. However, setting aside the intricacies of the intervening process, let's now reflect on the economic and trade significance of Brexit more than 4 years after the implementation. Brexit provides the UK with an opportunity to sever ties with the EU and transform into a global leader, signifying a rapid shift in identity, including reclaiming control over external economic policies, including trade policy. Given that trade policy fell within the exclusive competence of the EU, it can be argued that Brexit has brought about the most significant change in the realm of the UK's external economic and trade policy, I'm arguing. It represents a complete restoration of autonomy in external economic and trade policy. It is important to note that the last 5 years have been a period of challenge for this new identity. A comparable process of identity transformation has also unfolded within Korea as well. For a considerable period, Korea steadfastly characterized itself as the developing nation and hesitate to transcend that classification, a stance that many foreigners would scarcely concur with. Understanding this seemingly peculiar collective unconsciousness among Koreans may be achievable through the process of addressing the questions like, how do you define Korea? Or how do we distinguish contemporary Korean society from that of the 1960s or 1970s? Koreans generally perceived Korea as a country that has undergone compressed economic growth and even more condensed democratization processes, and also a nation teeming with dynamism and creativity, and a remarkable case of transitioning from a least developed country to an advanced one in just over 60 years. However, it is portrayed as a nation where its social constituents are not necessarily always content. These perceptions may be the reason why it was only recently the Korean people have embraced its status as a member of the advanced nations. This shift in identity portrayed the future of Korean-UK economic relationships, with the UK re-emerging in the Indo-Pacific horizons as a global player. It seeks to establish new ties with dynamic Indo-Pacific region, evident by the pursuit of the membership in the CPTPP. Regarding the UK's relations with Korea, the revision of the Korea-UK FTA marks just the beginning, with new economic cooperation between the two countries encompassing various areas such as supply chain collaboration, people-to-people exchange, and the high-tech collaboration, including creative industry, joint R&D, and development cooperation. I advocate for active collaboration between Korea and the UK in the creation of general global public goods. Also, since the conclusion of Second World War, the world has reaped the benefits of global public goods established by multilateral international organizations, encompassing international trade regulations, security, peace, and the financial order. Moreover, numerous advanced countries, including the United States and the United Kingdom, has contributed to the production of these global public goods, either autonomously or through collaboration of efforts with other countries. Thus, providing the groundwork for Korea's advancement. Thank you. To facilitate the emergence of second or third Korea, both nations must unite their effort to innovate and implement a strategy for generating global public goods. Let me close. Status is a matter of recognition. transitioning to a new identity demands fresh acknowledgement from others. It is recognized that Brexit has positioned the UK as the new global player, striving for acknowledgement as the top leader in various international economic spheres. Furthermore, the UK is perceived to continue its remarkable endeavors in the future, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. While Korea has diligently pursued the semblance of advanced nations akin to chasing rainbows, it now finds itself startled by the sudden presence of the bluebird at home. Koreans, as citizens of advanced nations, aspire to project that identity as global citizens and the corresponding status in their external relations. In this context, the new trajectory of Korea and the UK should commence with a mutual recognition of how these shifts in identity align like the cogwheels poised to turn into synchrony. Devolving identity necessitated a series of responsibility in bilateral relations. Moreover, shared understanding and collaborations response to the rapidly changing external landscape will serve as the cornerstone for mutual prosperity in the days ahead. Thank you very much.
예, 감사합니다. 우리 김홍종 교수님이 이쪽에 상당히 전문가셔서 하실 말씀이 굉장히 많으실 거예요. 특히 이제 저희가 그 한EU FTA에서 또 한영 FTA로 바뀌어지면서 또 코로나 팬데믹을 겪으면서 많은 변화가 있었던 것 같습니다. 그 점에 대해서 요약을 해주셨는데요. 조금 이따 다시 한번 얘기를 해보죠. 자, 두 번째 발표자는 Head of Science, Miss Jessica Coop, is going to talk on advancing the ROK-UK Global Strategic Partnership through Science and Technology Cooperation. Please welcome Jessica Coop. May I give you about 15 minutes? 15 minutes. Yes, so that we can have a discussion. Yes.
Try to speak quickly then. Hi, good morning everyone. Well, I would like to start by thanking very much Director Kim Yong-ho, President Yoon Sang-koo and Sir Peter Matheson for the great honour of this opportunity to speak to you today about the science and technology relationship between our two countries. And I would like to echo the thoughts of Professor Lee and Professor Kim at my pleasure that this is being seen as such an important topic because from my perspective it very much is. Science cooperation has long been a tool of soft power, and of course it's necessary to tackle grand challenges such as climate change. But now more than ever, science cooperation is becoming a really crucial strategic pillar due to the game-changing potential of emerging technologies, and it is increasingly intertwined in geopolitics as a result. So President Yoon Suk-yeol gave an excellent keynote address at the Historic Royal Society in London at the end of last year, where he reflected that much like the UK, Korea is very invested in using its world-leading position in science and technology for the greater good, to tackle global challenges, to enhance global prosperity, and to push the frontiers of our understanding of the universe. And ultimately to harness the power of advanced technology in a responsible way and to influence the trajectory of mankind for the better. So I think it's very fitting to be speaking about this topic today and to share some reflections on the critical strategic importance of science cooperation for our two countries. I'd like to begin, and in line with what Professor Lee was saying earlier about how interesting these topics are, by just reflecting a bit on the context for our science cooperation, as we're really in an unprecedented time of scientific opportunity. I think it's very easy to take for granted the elegant science and engineering that underpins the technology on which our economies and our modern lifestyles hinge. Almost all adults in developed countries can recall the astonishing pace at which computing has become more powerful, and yet very few of us give much thought to the Samsung smartphones that we have in our pockets today, to the transistors that are contained within those chips. And they are engineering marvels which are smaller than the wavelength of visible light. They're smaller even than a virus. And they're continuing to get smaller still. And the advances in these transistors mean that the average smartphone is some 100,000 times more powerful than the Apollo computer that landed humans on the moon in 1969. And meanwhile, we've got emerging quantum technologies that are based on science that sounds more like science fiction that could yet revolutionize our way in ways we can scarcely imagine. And while the climate crisis increasingly forces us to think consciously about which energy sources our electricity comes from, the average person may know next to nothing about the technology that's facilitating the energy transition. The use of advanced magnets to enhance the efficiency of turbines and wind power generators, the strides in battery technology that enable the electrification of transport and the storage of intermittent renewable energy generation, and the engineering that is required to harness and control the nuclear fission chain reactions that produce safe, low-carbon, round-the-clock energy. The UK built the world's first commercial nuclear reactor in 1956. Korea has become a leader now in the time and cost-efficient delivery of such large-scale nuclear power plants, and now private and public efforts in countries such as both of ours hope to one day produce abundant, commercially viable clean energy by harnessing the fusion reactions of the sun here on Earth. And of course, it's not just our lifestyles and economies that have been enhanced by these technologies. Working out how to fix nitrogen from the air through the Haber process has allowed us to feed billions of people by enabling cheap, widespread fertilizers to increase crop yields. Vaccines and antibiotics have contributed to the global average life expectancy around the world more than doubling since 1900. Both British and Korean companies, scientists and policymakers innovated at pace to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know Ambassador Yoon earlier referenced the cooperation that happened between Samsung Biologics and AstraZeneca. And this was around the development of novel vaccines, experimental treatments, cutting-edge diagnostics, and unprecedented public health approaches. And now next-generation medicine based on fields such as engineering, biology, and omics promise to not only extend life expectancy, but also to keep increasing the years that are spent healthy. The CRISPR-Cas9 system that accelerated efforts to edit the human genome was discovered only 10 years ago, and yet just last November, the UK medicines regulator was the first in the world to approve a gene editing treatment for humans, revolutionising treatment for diseases such as sickle cell anemia. So it's through this prism of evolving scientific opportunity that we find the core of the science and technology cooperation between our two countries, with our associated exchanges of human resources, funding, and joint infrastructure. We signed our bilateral cooperation agreement with Korea in science and technology back in 1985. Of course, both our countries had an interest in advancing areas of national interest and unlocking funding for their researchers. However, arguably, the more powerful impact of this agreement was as an instrument of soft power, to make a statement of intent around deepening bilateral relations. And in this sense, science was also working for diplomacy rather than just benefiting from it. And indeed, during President Yoon's state visit to London last year, we signed no fewer than 4 major science and technology government-to-government agreements as we upgraded our overall bilateral relationship to the level of a global strategic partnership. This included an agreement to majorly enhance and elevate the cooperation based on the 1985 agreement, and we also expanded our collaboration to new areas, including through a digital partnership, semiconductor partnership, and space MOU. We also signed additional agreements in areas with a science component, including a clean energy partnership and MOUs in nuclear energy and offshore wind, as well as a strategic cyber partnership. And all of this sat alongside an even larger number of agreements between different public and private institutions in everything from joint funding to engineering biology. And in perhaps what is the most interesting example of modern science diplomacy of all, Blackpink received their MBE medals from the King for the role they played in raising awareness around the COP26 climate summit. So these achievements are both a product and proof of how far our bilateral relationship has come. And the upshot of this science and technology collaboration has been that it plays a major role in attracting inward investment and promoting outward trade. Our two countries announced some 21 billion in investment into the UK at the recent state visit, a substantial proportion of which was related to renewable energy, life sciences, and aerospace. So there's great momentum in our science and technology collaboration, which brings with it opportunities to generate prosperity for both our countries while also tackling grand challenges such as climate change and global health. However, as well as being in an unprecedented time of scientific opportunity, we are also in an unprecedented time of scientific risk. And as a result, there is a newly evolving dimension to our science and technology cooperation. So today I would like to quickly explore three new frontiers that I believe are shaping our cooperation in new ways. The first is the intersection between science and supply chain vulnerability. As existing technologies become more complex, so too do the supply chains that underpin them. The supply chain of semiconductors, from raw quartz to a computer chip, is so vast and so complex that almost no one has in-depth expertise for every single step. And this is particularly the case when you consider these dependencies extend to the global supply chain that makes up the extremely complex machinery that processes that purify the polysilicon, turn it into wafers, and etch it with photolithography. The potential impact of disruption to even a small part of such a complex chain is great. At the same time of this complexity, there has been rapid demand growth of particular technologies and domination of the supply chain by certain countries. As well as intensifying resource competition and supply chain bottlenecks, there are already plenty of real-world examples of countries attempting to weaponize their dominance in the supply chain, in commodities such as raw and processed technology metals. This risks constraining economic growth and our ability to tackle urgent problems such as the existential threat of climate change. As an example, in just 2 years, the International Energy Agency has estimated the percentage of emissions reductions that are dependent on technologies that are not yet commercially available has dropped by 30%. So the pace of innovation is impressively fast. But the scale-up of newly commercialized technologies may not happen quickly enough if the supply of metals that are critical to clean energy generation and storage is disrupted. So the first new frontier is the need to work together in identifying supply chain vulnerabilities and cooperation to secure resources and diversify sources. And I'm pleased to say that both of our countries committed to establishing a new bilateral supply chains dialogue in the Downing Street Accord. Secondly is the growing need for ensuring that new technologies are deployed in a way that is safe and responsible. Scientific advancement can drive global change as much as it enables it. Although this has long been the case, the unprecedented pace of science and technology advancement risks policymakers and regulators being left behind. The pace of advancement may even accelerate as applications of artificial intelligence revolutionize the way in which we do science. Long-held jokes in the scientific community about fusion energy and quantum computing perpetually being 30 years away are starting to look shaky. And this is particularly alarming when we consider some of these technologies have the potential to do great harm. Quantum computers could redefine all kinds of fields through the incredible scale of their problem-solving power. However, it has long been predicted that they could also undo the RSA encryption that underpins the security of the whole internet, so-called Q-Day. This would compromise critical infrastructure, including banking, control systems, and secure communication. Similarly, new avenues in synthetic biology might enable us to engineer biology in ways that transform health and agriculture. But such technology raises difficult questions around bioethics, such as was seen in 2018 when a Chinese scientist shocked the world by admitting to genetically engineering human embryos that led to live births. And furthermore, engineering biology techniques could also be used to create sophisticated and cheap bioweapons. And on top of this, the challenge is no longer just within labs. Potentially disruptive technologies are in some cases quite literally being placed into the hands of millions. Almost anyone with a smartphone can now make a deepfake video or experiment with AI. There is also disagreement, even among experts, as to the nature of some of these risks. Some feel that we should push ahead, and others feel that we should constrain our progress, the so-called boomers and doomers. For every person hailing artificial intelligence as sparking a new era of capability, productivity, and innovation, there is one who predicts socioeconomic chaos, and even humanity's doom. And of course, there are many who recognise the grey area in between. Last November, the UK hosted the first ever Global Artificial Intelligence Safety Summit. Over 28 countries, including Korea, signed up to the Bletchley Declaration, which provided a template for international collaboration in managing the potentially catastrophic risk to humanity posed by AI. And I'm delighted that Korea is exercising its leadership as co-host with us for the follow-up Seoul Artificial Intelligence Summit next week to take this conversation forwards. I believe we are ideal partners for cooperation in this area, with Korea being a powerhouse for the memory chips that are needed for AI, and the UK AI sector ranked as third in the world by its strength. So this is a good example of the second frontier of our science cooperation, which is in working together to ensure new technology is developed and deployed in a safe and responsible way. We have also committed to working together on digital technical standards across different technologies through the digital partnership that was signed through the state visit, and we will seek to explore regulatory and technical cooperation through our main science and technology dialogue. Finally, science and technology is more integrated than ever before in geopolitics. Some of the technologies emerging today are so powerful that they risk shifting geopolitical balances of power in ways that could undermine stability. Some of this is through hard power and the potential for emerging technologies to be used to attack, control, or undermine other countries. New technologies, and digital ones in particular, have the potential to be powerful tools of authoritarianism and disinformation, even across borders. But the dynamic plays out in other ways too. The advantages gained through technological supremacy translate to strategic and geopolitical power. Even where the same technologies are emerging in multiple places around the globe, the first movers who can set the regulatory rules, norms, and standards are likely to derive long-term economic and security advantage. Furthermore, there is increased competition and contestation of areas such as space, international waters, and the polar regions. And of course, we are only too aware here in Korea of how militarized such areas can become when the tensions that can arise when countries with differing values and ideology become increasingly assertive. So the third and final new frontier of our science and technology cooperation that I would like to propose today is therefore that it plays more of a front seat than ever before in shaping geopolitics. It has a related and critical role to play in supporting the global rules-based order and the projection of the values of both our countries, such as freedom and democracy. And the elevation of our bilateral relationship to a global strategic partnership is the foundation to closer working of these areas. Is that time for me? Almost. I can keep going, or I can save it for the Q&A.
Yes.
Save for the Q&A.
In Q&A.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
I wish I could give you more time for your presentation. We have about 15 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is 저도 궁금한 게 많더라고요. 해보니까 한 7개 질문이 있는데요. 굉장히 간단하게 질문을 좀 두 분께 드리고요. 그동안 좀 생각하셨다가 있으면은 제가 또 질문 기회를 좀 드리겠습니다. 같이 한번 토론했으면 좋겠습니다. Jessica, I have a question for you. And after the Brexit in 2016, in Korean society, the image of the UK post Brexit is that whether it is regarded as a Europe or UK, and when they travel before the Brexit, when they travel, Korean people travel to Europe, they stopped over in the UK, start their journey toward the EU. But now many are passing the UK when they travel to EU. So, but I understand when you listening to your presentation, also when the ambassador talked to Korean audiences, that UK is now trying to stretch into Indo-Pacific. So the major question, maybe that is the major change of your diplomatic direction after the Brexit, that I think you need to first persuade why UK is important to Korea and Asian countries, in what sense. So I think that's the point we need to be persuaded. So that is the question number one. 그리고 두 번째 질문은 우리 김홍종 교수님 그 중요한 발표 중에 그 한국과 영국이 함께 생산할 퍼블릭 그치다고 하는 얘기가 있는데 굉장히 중요한 얘기 같은데 프레젠테이션에서 조금 더 설명이 좀 덜 된 것 같아서요. 우리가 같은 아이덴티티를 크리에이트하고 같이 만들어야 될 퍼블릭 그것이 뭘까? 그 문제에 대해서 좀 상세하게 말씀해 주시면 좋을 것 같고요. Third question goes to Jessica again. I am Professor Kim. We went to the UK in the 1990s. South Korea expanded their diplomatic ties toward China, former socialist countries, and Europe. Many of the bright heads went to the UK and Europe at that time. But in my view, as a professor teaching at one of the major universities in South Korea, the number of the students going abroad for their postgraduate studies are rapidly decreasing. Many of them, my generation, like O and Professor Kim, after we studied in the UK, most of them went back to their alma mater. My case, Yonsei University, Seoul National Korea. They played a very important role in academic community. But it is so sad that the number is decreasing. It is very hard to find UK educated or EU educated scholars working in Korean academic institutions. So to change that situation, what kind of effort is being made by embassy and also foreign ministry or UK government as a whole? I have emphasized this matter whenever I have met with the authorities from the UK and also embassies many times, but I don't see positive changes since then. So that is my question to Jessica. And fourth question, you mentioned about clean energy and also nuclear energy cooperation, that the debate is still continues even in the EU whether atomic nuclear energy will be regarded as a part of the RE100 or not in the EU. So there's a discussion between France and Germany on that issue. What is the position of the UK toward nuclear energy? Fifth question, I would like to ask Vice Chancellor Peter Mathieson that, as Jessica pointed out, UK is very strong potential in terms of technology in the area of AI and also semiconductor. For example, ARM is Cambridge started based semiconductor NPU GPU producing company. So if you briefly mentioned about global AI index, of course US is topping, but China, UK, Korea, we top the list as well. So I think you have a meeting with this morning with a major, the president of the major university in South Korea. So what is the potential strength of the University of Edinburgh in terms of studying, researching AI and semiconductors, and what kind of cooperation are you pursuing with Korean counterparts? That's what I want to hear from you. He is visiting only 24 hours in Korea. So, and also, the sixth question goes to you or Vice Chancellor concerning devolution issue, separation of Scotland from the UK. How things going on with that issue? Is that really serious, or is it a real story? That I want to hear, if possible, from Vice Chancellor about that issue. Korean people are very interested in that separation issue as well. And finally, Professor Kim Hong-jong, 지금 미중 갈등이 굉장히 심화되고 이런 상황에서 양국 간의 한국하고 영국하고의 협력이 어떤 이익을 우리에게 줄 수 있는지, 어떤 방향으로 가야 되는지. What is the future direction of the Korea-UK relations in the era of U.S.-China conflictual period? One may call it start of the new Cold War. So what we can do with the same identity, similar identity, sharing same identity between the two countries. That's my questions. So 제가 질문할 때 혹시 좀 궁금하신 거 아무거나 이배영 선생님도 오시고 그랬는데 뭐 좀 재밌는 질문 있으면 아무거나 해주셔도 좋겠습니다. 이배영 선생님 뭐 질문 하실 거 있을 것 같은데 안 하시는 것 같은데. 아까 재밌는 질문 많이 드렸는데 안 하시네요. 예. 간단하게 자기소개하셔도 좋고요.
네, 감사합니다. 저는 성균관대학교의 과학수사학과라는 과가 있는데 거기에 석좌 교수를 맡고 있는 정희선입니다. 좋은 기회 들어서 굉장히 감사드리고 저는 사실은 요즘 오픈 AI 때문에 모든 나라가 다 이제 관심이 많은데 지금 뭐 미국 같은 경우 챗GPT라든가 뭐 코파일롯이라든가 뭐 여러 가지가 있는데 혹시 영국에서는 어떤 쪽으로 좀 어프로치를 하시는지 우리나라 같은 경우에는 일단은 뭐 하드웨어 쪽에 중점이 된다 그러면은 영국에서는 어떻게 그쪽을 좀 접근하려고 하는지 그거 궁금합니다.
Yes, yes. 어제 우리 아주 그 굉장히 쇼킹한 오픈 AI에서 저기 숏 릴리즈를 내놓은 거 있잖아요. 그래서 Vice Chancellor or Jessica Cope, either of you can answer that question. 또 질문 있으세요? 저기 let me invite Jessica Cope and Professor Kim Hong-jong to the podium so that you can. Yes. 지금 저희들이 한 7분 정도 시간이 남았거든요. So we have about 7 minutes left. So if there's no any question from the audience, either of you can answer concerning the question from me and from her, and also later I will invite Vice Chancellor to comment on my question. Okay.
Do you want me to take all the questions together, or should we take it in turns?
As
or?
you like it. As you
Okay.
like it. You can start first.
All right, I'll start. I'll use my own microphone because I think there's a bit of a disparity in height here. On the UK kind of importance to Korea, I mean, it's actually an interesting one because you heard it from both my ambassador and from Ambassador Yoon at the embassy in the UK that actually, from our perspective, from diplomatic relations, actually the relationship has really never been stronger. And actually, what I've seen, I've been in Korea for 3 years now as a diplomat, and what I've seen in that time has actually been quite a big shift from a system that is quite preoccupied with its big relationships with the likes of US, China, Japan, and other sort of regional players, to one that is now looking a bit more to do more with other countries. And we've really seen the benefits of that from the UK side in terms of the level of ambition of for doing more with us. That's very much in the science and technology area, where luckily in the UK we have an extremely strong base research community to support that. And actually we have some great complementarities as well, where Korea has a lot of the manufacturing power and some really impressive lessons for us to learn in the commercialization of technologies. I always quite enjoy the anecdote that the technology for lithium batteries was developed, at least in part, in quite a major way by a British researcher, but in fact it is Korea now who is really reaping the benefits from that with its huge battery industry, which is probably very much the envy of the UK now. So I think finding those complementarities and really exploiting them is quite key, actually, to really cementing our relationship and the importance of that. And I think that is being recognised now by the system on both sides as an interest area. Should I hand over? I think you had the second question.
오케이. 예, 그 아주 좋은 질문 해주셔서 감사드립니다. 첫 번째 이제 두 번째 거부터 먼저 답변드리자면, 미중 갈등 상황에서 한영 협력, 이게 양자간 협력이라고 하는 게 이제 이런 겁니다. 그러니까 bilateral relation도 있고 또 minilateral 혹은 plurilateral relation에서 만나는 기도 하고 그다음에 글로벌 이제 multilateral 어레나에서 만나기도 하고 이렇게 되는데 한양 간의 그 bilateral relations에서 굉장히 이제 evolutionary change가 있어야 된다고 저는 생각합니다. 그러니까 양국 간에 만났을 때 양국 문제만 논의하지 말고 다른 얘기를 좀 해야 됩니다. 그러니까 다른 얘기. 여기서는 이제 아까 글로벌 커먼 굿을 말씀하셨는데 그런 거를 위해서 어떻게 협력할 것인가. 그다음에 Indo-Pacific, the UK is now recognized as the one of the countries of the Indo-Pacific. So Indo-Pacific country로서 영국과 이 Indo-Pacific 지역에서 할 수 있는 일이 굉장히 많이 있거든요. 이제 그거를 같이 논의한다든가 아니면 그다음에 이제 글로벌 되는 거. 그다음에 또 바이래터럴 이렇게 해서 아니면 트라이래터럴 코어퍼레이션 어떻게 할 것인가. 한국과 영국이 같이 제3자하고 어떻게 할 것인가. 그걸 이제 그런 걸 논의해야 된다는 것이고요. 그래서 그러면 어떤 걸 이제 해야 되느냐? 메리타임 시큐리티 관련해서는 분명히 이거는 양국이 이제는 좀 새로운 차원에서 얘기를 해야 된다고 저는 그렇게 생각합니다. 이건 굉장히 중요합니다. 이거 서플라이 체인 디스럽션이 굉장히 많이 일어나고 있기 때문에 이건 반드시 뭐 미중 간의 갈등뿐만 아니라 웨더라든가 그다음에 지역 분쟁이라든가 여러 가지 일 때문에 일어납니다. 그다음에 이제 디벨롭먼트 어시스턴스 관련해서는요. 개발 협력 관련해서는 사실은 놈이 있어요. 우리가 지금 OECD 디벨롭먼트 어시스턴스 커미티에서 영국과 한국이 전부 다 회원입니다. 그래서 거기 일단 놈이 있긴 한데 우리가 양국 간에 할 수 있는 게 뭐냐면 그 놈이 뭐 굉장히 원칙적인 것이기 때문에 거기 조금 더 한 발 더 나아가서 실제로 적용될 때 양국이 제3국에 대해서 디벨롭먼트 어시스턴스를 할 때 그때 어떠한 방식을 할 것인가에 대해서 조금 더 구체적인 성공 사례를 만들 수가 있습니다. 이런 부분도 해야 되고요. 그다음에 아까 그 우리 제시카께서 스탠다드 관련해서 굉장히 좋은 얘기를 했는데 IT 플랫폼에서의 스탠다드는 지금 사실은 미국이 주도하고 있고 거기에 대항해서 중국이 지금 하고 있는 그런 상황입니다. 그래서 IT 플랫폼이 굉장히 키 이슈입니다. 이게 IT 플랫폼이. 특히 이제 인도퍼시픽 지역에서 수많은 IT 그 플랫폼을 어떻게 설정할 것인가 하는 문제에 대해서 굉장히 논란이 많은데 그 논란이 많은 이유는 설정이 안 돼서이기도 하지만 또 한 가지는 기술이 빠르게 개발되고 있습니다. 그래서 기업들만의 큰 기업들 간의 이해관계가 다 달라요. 그래서 이런 부분이 있는데 이거는 영국이 굉장히 앞서 말씀드렸지만 리서치가 굉장히 강하고 또 한국도 굉장히 관심이 많고 또 우리도 그렇기 때문에 이 스탠다드 특히 IT 분야에 대해서 스탠다드 그다음에 친환경 분야에 대한 스탠다드 이걸 또 굉장히 논의를 할 필요가 있고요. 마지막으로 가장 중요한 얘기인데요. 가장 중요한 얘기인데 휴먼 라이트, 룰 오브 로, 프리덤 이런 거에 대해서 지금 저는 이제 글로벌 사우스에서 주최하는 국제 회의를 굉장히 많이 가보는데요. 완전히 그냥 잊혀진 것처럼 이렇게 얘기를 하고 있어요. 지금. 그런데 한국이라는 나라, 대한민국이라는 나라는 여러 가지 면에서 수많은 익셉션인데 많은 예외적인데 가장 중요한 익셉션 중에 하나는 오픈 이코노미 그리고 디모크라타이제이션 그다음에 휴먼 라이트 프리덤, 룰 오브 로를 위해서 끊임없이 노력을 해온 나라고 거기에 대한 가장 exemplary 케이스가 한국입니다. 그래서 이 한국과 영국은 한국을 굉장히 많이 활용할 수가 있어요. 왜냐하면 지금 미국이나 영국이 얘기하는 게 글로벌 사우스한테 안 먹혀요. 그러니까 이런 부분에서 많이 활용할 수 있기 때문에 앞으로 우리가 할 수 있는 일은 무궁무진하다 말씀드리겠습니다.
So I think your third question was on the decrease of students going overseas to places like the UK for postgraduate study. Well, I guess in my role in the embassy, I should of course say that we are always very keen to be encouraging Korean students to be studying in the UK. However, I do have a bit of a sense that I think it is on some level not entirely a bad thing if Korean institutions are kind of sufficiently fulfilling the research, the levels of research capability that students actually don't necessarily feel the need to go overseas to get that education because they can get that domestically here. And I think that's kind of a bit of a testament actually to how much development is happening in Korea's research capability in lots of different fields, including technological fields, such as the ones that are covered in my portfolio. We do, of course, have our kind of scholarship schemes that we use to support some of Korea's best and brightest students to go and study in UK institutions. But I think it's also quite interesting at this point that we're seeing increasing levels of UK students coming to study at Korean institutions, which is perhaps far more so than has ever been seen as being the case in the past. And I think actually that two-way movement and a kind of increasing balance in terms of not just an outflow of students, but students moving both ways, certainly from the scientist perspective, where I mean, scientists love to collaborate anyway. It's never something that they have to be strong-armed into doing. But I think if it's moving two ways, I see that as being a very good thing for our overall cooperative relationship. And then just quickly on your question on nuclear energy. Unlike our colleagues in Germany, the UK is very clear that nuclear energy is absolutely an essential part of meeting our 2050 net zero goals. We've got ambitious targets to try to meet that, and it's something that we are looking to work with Korea on closely. In fact, just this week, my colleague, who's the energy attaché, is actually back in London for our annual nuclear dialogue. Some of you may have seen some of the news reporting around that. Which may have been a little bit jumping the gun, but that you know there are kind of discussions about how we can work together to do more to help support each other to meet goals using nuclear energy as part of that mix.
Thank you. Finally, let me give you an opportunity to you.
Thank you. So there's not much time left, and I could speak for ages on both topics. But the first topic you asked about was what can Edinburgh offer in collaboration with places like Korea and with some of the universities in Korea. And your second question was about the relationship between these two flags. Okay, so the first question, I think Edinburgh is very proud of its history in artificial intelligence. So we were the second university in the world to teach artificial intelligence. The first in the world was Stanford, and Edinburgh was second. And just recently we celebrated 60 years of teaching AI. So it's a very long history. But about 5 years ago, we had a conversation amongst our experts that said, what will be the gaps in the future around AI? Everybody does AI now. So, we were first, but everybody now does it. And we decided about 5 years ago that one of the big gaps was around the ethics and the law and the regulation of AI. Now, this was long before ChatGPT. This now looks like a very good decision. We hired some significant experts, particularly a woman called Shannon Valor, who we hired from the United States. At the time we hired her, she worked for Santa Clara University, but she was on secondment to Google as the lead advisor to Google on the ethics of artificial intelligence. So we hired her to come to Edinburgh. She's now built a group around her. We have a very large concentration of researchers studying ethics and regulation and law of AI. And I think this is a gap that we can fill. So Korea is extraordinarily good at the hardware, as was mentioned, and about the technology, the technological aspects of AI and of computer science. I think what Edinburgh can perhaps offer in collaboration is work together on the ethics and the regulation and the law. And I think those two, that would make a very strong partnership. And we would certainly be willing to indulge in those partnerships with Korean universities, as we will with other universities from around the world. Very briefly on the subject of Scottish independence. So there was a referendum in 2014, and the vote was 55-45 against independence. So that at that time, the decision was that Scotland stays in the UK. In order to readdress that question, there has to be another referendum, a public vote. Public opinion in Scotland at the moment is mostly estimated to be about 50-50. So it's very close, with an age divide. So the young want independence, the old do not. One tactic that the Scottish government has had is just to wait. The more old people die, the more young people become voters. The vote maybe will shift. So there's just one possibility, is just wait. The Scottish economy that would have underpinned an independence vote in 2014 was really based on oil. Of course, the oil reserves are significantly lower now, and also the world is moving away from fossil fuels. So there is an economic question about whether Scottish economy could survive as an independent nation if fossil fuels are no longer the major factor. but it's a political question because the UK government has to give permission for a referendum. And currently, the UK government will not do so. We're about to have a general election. There's most people predicting that the government will change. And then there'll be a very interesting question about whether the new government will stick to that position about not granting a referendum. It's a political question at the moment. It's a very emotional question rather than really an economic one.
Thank you. I wish we could have some more time for the discussion. 박수를 좀 크게 한번 보내주시면. Thank you very much. 저희들이 이제 그 짧은 시간이지만 굉장히 많은 영국에 관한 얘기를 좀 정보를 들으셨는데요. 실제로 영국하고 한국과의 관계, 또 한국의 위상, 영국의 위상 많은 차이가 변화가 있었습니다. 앞으로도 좀 계속 관심 가지고 특히 과학기술 이런 쪽에 얘기를 할 수 있었으면 좋겠습니다. 요 다음 끝나고 더 재밌는 안보와 정치 얘기가 남아 있습니다. 여러분들 잠깐 휴식하셨다가 그 다음 세션에 계속 뵙도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.